What if oceans evaporated overnight? Imagine closing your eyes one evening, while the rhythmic sound of waves carries across the shoreline, the air cool and damp with salt, the smell of the sea lingering like a gentle reminder of how vast and alive the planet truly is. Now imagine waking the next morning to silence. No waves, no tides, no horizon of blue stretching endlessly beneath the rising sun. Only emptiness, stretching farther than any desert. An immense and desolate plain of glistening salt and cracked mud where the world's oceans once breathed and moved. The transformation would be so sudden, so absolute, that the mind would struggle to accept it. In this quiet and reflective journey, we will walk slowly through this impossible scenario, tracing how the earth, its air, its creatures, and even its memories would shift if the oceans simply vanished overnight, leaving behind a hollow planet gasping for equilibrium. The story begins at dawn, when the first light reveals the truth. Along coastlines once alive with movement, there is stillness. The sand is damp but not wet, and the smell of salt fills the air like smoke after a great fire. The water is gone, leaving behind vast fields of exposed seabed. Ships rest on their sides, their hulls embedded in thick layers of silt, their shadows stretching long in the pale morning light. Coral reefs lie bare, their colors fading to ghostly white within hours. Creatures that once lived suspended in the endless motion of the sea now lie motionless on the new earth, a silent mosaic of shells and scales that glitters in the sun. The first people to see this would not believe their eyes. They would walk out expecting to meet the tide, only to keep walking and walking, until the horizon swallows them in a haze of steam. The air itself is heavy with moisture, for the oceans have not disappeared entirely. They have risen into the sky. Above, clouds tower higher than mountains, dense and luminous, their undersides glowing gold and copper in the light. The atmosphere is thick, shimmering with heat and vapor, and within it the energy of all the world's waters churns unseen. The balance that once kept temperatures mild and predictable begins to unravel within hours. Without the cooling and stabilizing presence of liquid oceans, the continents heat rapidly beneath the unfiltered sun. Winds begin to stir, first gentle, then violent, racing across the vast empty basins. Dust, salt, and fine sediment rise into the air, forming hazy curtains that obscure the light. Rivers run backward, drawn toward lower ground, but there is nowhere left for them to flow. In valleys and basins, the remaining water collects into shallow, boiling pools that hiss and evaporate, feeding the sky's growing weight of vapor. Life on land begins to feel the shift. Plants wilt as humidity climbs beyond what leaves can bear. Animals seek shade, confused by the heat that presses down from above, and the air that feels as if it could be drunk rather than breathed. The soundscape of the planet changes. The roar of surf and the whisper of waves are replaced by an eerie stillness punctuated only by the crackle of drying earth and the distant rumble of wind moving through the empty basins. Day by day, the new atmosphere grows thicker. The moisture condenses in colossal clouds that circle the planet, glowing white in the day and silver at night beneath the moon. Storms form spontaneously, sheets of lightning arcing through the vapor like veins of fire. Rain begins to fall, but it cannot find balance. In some places it pours endlessly, drowning valleys and plains in freshwater floods. In others, the heat remains so intense that no drop reaches the ground before turning to steam. The climate that emerges is one of extremes, a chaotic symphony of heat and cold, dryness and deluge. The oceans were not just bodies of water. They were the planet's memory, its moderator, the great equalizer that stored sunlight and released it slowly. Without them, Earth becomes a place of swift moods and wild changes. The winds that once flowed steadily across the seas now race unimpeded around the world. Dust storms rise over the dried ocean floors, carrying fine grains of salt across continents. The very color of the sky begins to shift, tinged with the faint white of suspended crystals and vapor. The beauty of this imagined world is haunting. Under the moonlight, the empty ocean basins shimmer like frozen mirrors, reflecting the constellations in their cracked and gleaming surfaces. The air glows faintly with the haze of moisture still rising from the ground. Mountains that once stood at the edge of the sea now tower over endless plains of salt and sand. Islands have become vast plateaus, their coral foundations transformed into labyrinths of mineral and stone. And yet even in this desolation, life begins to adapt. Certain plants, able to draw water from deep roots or from the air itself, spread cautiously across the new landscape. Insects cluster around isolated pockets of moisture, Birds fly farther and higher in search of new feeding grounds. Humanity too would endure, though altered. Settlements once built along coasts would relocate toward rivers and underground aquifers. Technology would turn to the sky, seeking ways to capture and condense the moisture hanging heavy above. Giant condensation towers would rise from the basins, shimmering in the sun, collecting water that falls like morning dew. Civilization would bend to the rhythm of a world remade. But as centuries pass in this imagined timeline, the transformation deepens. The oceans, now vapor, begin to escape into space. The thin line of blue that once wrapped the planet fades to a pale white, then to gray. The pressure of the atmosphere drops as hydrogen and oxygen drift away. The planet cools, deserts expand, and rain becomes rare. The memory of the ocean lingers only in minerals and fossils, in stories told by the few who still remember waves. In this long imagining of what if the oceans evaporated overnight, the planet continues to change as the centuries unfold and the once blue world becomes a pale reflection of itself. The land that was once covered by water is now carved by wind alone, sculpted into vast rippling dunes of salt and sediment. The air carries a faint metallic scent, dry and thin, whispering through canyons that were once seabeds. The mountains no longer wear the softened cloak of mist that oceans once provided, and their outlines stand sharp and unforgiving beneath a sun that burns brighter through a thinning atmosphere. The stars appear earlier each evening and stay longer in the cold, still mornings. Without the oceans to moderate temperature, the difference between day and night grows immense. The days become blistering, the ground hot enough to shimmer with heat haze, while nights turn frigid, the sky clear and merciless. Rivers vanish into the air before they can form deltas, and the cycle of evaporation and condensation that once nourished all ecosystems falters into silence. The earth, once alive with sound and motion, grows quieter with each passing generation. Yet within this silence there is strange beauty. Standing at the center of what was once the Pacific Basin, you can see for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The horizon bends slightly, a soft reminder of the planet's curvature. The ground beneath your feet glitters with layers of mineral deposits laid down by vanished tides. Each step crunches faintly, and the sound echoes in the open air. Fossilized remains of whales lie half-buried, their skeletons stretching across the flats like monuments to a vanished age. The air is thin but tinged with the faint humidity of what little vapor remains. Occasionally a storm builds on the horizon, its clouds dark and immense, but the rain evaporates before it touches the ground, falling as invisible veils of vapor that shimmer in sunlight. Humanity survives by adapting. Great domed cities rise near mountain springs and underground reservoirs. Inside, artificial humidity mimics the long-lost climate, sustaining crops and forests beneath glass. People learn to grow food with minimal water, to recycle every breath and drop of moisture. Airships glide through the still skies, powered by the heat differentials between day and night. Energy comes from the sun, unfiltered and abundant, and from the winds that circle the globe with relentless force. The human spirit endures, reshaping civilization to fit this altered world. Art and culture evolve around the memory of the ocean. Music carries the rhythm of waves long vanished. Paintings and sculptures capture the colors of lost horizons. Poetry becomes an act of remembrance, each word a ripple across the stillness. Even the language of daily life changes. Words like sea, shore, and tide drift into myth, their meanings known but their references gone. The few who venture beyond the safety of domes into the open world are explorers of a new kind, pilgrims walking across the memory of water. The animal world has changed as well. Species that once depended on the sea adapt or disappear. Birds migrate along new routes, guided not by currents but by the shimmer of heat. In the basin, strange new life forms evolve, hardy creatures that feed on minerals and moisture in the air. Deep underground, where ancient aquifers remain, ecosystems thrive in secret, sheltered from the desiccating sky. These hidden places become the last cradles of biodiversity, the beating heart of a planet, learning to live without its oceans. As millennia pass, even these refuges begin to fade. The atmosphere continues to thin as hydrogen escapes into space, leaving behind heavier gases. The planet's color shifts from blue to pale gold, then to gray. From space, Earth looks more like a giant desert moon, its continents fused together by time, its weather subdued, and yet traces of the old world remain. In valleys once filled with coral reefs, Pillars of limestone stand like frozen waves. In deep trenches now open to the air, strange crystals form from minerals left behind, glittering with faint iridescence. The story of the oceans is written in stone, and the planet carries those stories like scars. Imagine standing in such a world, beneath a dimmer sun, surrounded by silence so vast it seems infinite. Your breath is visible in the cool air, and when you close your eyes you can almost hear the ghost of waves. The memory of water becomes a presence, a spirit woven into wind and dust, whispering across the empty plains. It reminds humanity of what was lost and what was learned, that every system, every balance, every cycle depends on every other. The oceans were not only water, they were time itself, a slow pulse that measured the ages. Without them, the earth becomes a clock that no longer ticks, waiting for equilibrium that will never return. Yet the imagination does not end here. Slowly, over millions of years, volcanic activity begins to stir again. The heat from the planet's core melts pockets of trapped ice deep underground, releasing steam into the atmosphere. Rain returns in fleeting storms that darken the dust and carve shallow channels across the plains. The world breathes again just a little. From these small beginnings, new lakes form shallow and ephemeral, gathering in craters and depressions. Microbes arise within them, feeding on minerals and sunlight. Life begins another cycle, humble but determined. The story of water starts anew, written in smaller script across the face of a patient earth. As night falls in this imagined future, the stars shine brighter than ever before. The Milky Way stretches across the sky in silent splendor, and the air is so clear that even distant galaxies are visible as faint smudges of light. In the quiet of this world, humanity looks upward, remembering the oceans not as a loss but as a lesson, a reminder of the fragility and persistence of life. Breathing slowly, you can feel that lesson settle within you, like calm water in a still pool. The journey has taken you from abundance to absence, from motion to stillness, from sound to silence. And yet in that silence, there is peace. In the stillness that follows the disappearance of the oceans, the planet becomes both ancient and new, as if time itself has slowed to match the rhythm of a quieter world. The air that once carried the cries of seabirds and the crash of surf now moves in long sighs across the dry expanses where the seafloor lies exposed. The continents are joined by wide plains of salt and stone, linking what were once separated worlds. Old coastlines are marked by cliffs that now rise from nothing, their bases streaked with bands of color that tell stories of tides and currents long gone. Walking across these endless flats, you feel the crunch of mineral crystals beneath your feet and see the shimmer of mirages that dance in the heat. In the distance, mountains rise like islands in a reversed sea, their slopes etched with the memory of waves that once lapped against them. The light at dawn is pale gold at noon, white and unrelenting, and at dusk a deep orange that bleeds slowly into violet as night returns. Stars emerge sharper and brighter than in any era of history, for the sky is free of moisture and haze. The moon hangs above the barren world, casting long shadows across the cracked ground, and reflecting faintly off the salt plains where once the Pacific breathed. In this vast silence, the planet seems to listen to itself, the faint tremor of its own heartbeat deep underground. It is here that the remnants of the old ocean still flow in molten veins and subterranean rivers of heat that wind through the mantle. Volcanic eruptions punctuate the stillness, releasing plumes of ash and vapor into the thin air. Each eruption is like a memory rising from the deep, a reminder that beneath the lifeless crust, the earth remains alive, restless and waiting. Over centuries, these eruptions release gases that thicken the atmosphere again, forming clouds that drift and condense into rain. The first rainfall in thousands of years falls not as torrents but as a slow, steady drizzle that darkens the dust and forms shallow puddles. The air smells of metal and ozone, and the sound of water on stone feels like music. The puddles join into streams, the streams into rivers, and in low basins, small lakes begin to form. Around them, life returns, microscopic at first, then more complex. Spores carried on the wind awaken bacteria emerge from dormancy, and the first green filaments of algae spread across the water's edge. Evolution restarts its quiet dance, guided by the same patience that once filled the oceans. Humanity, if it still endures, watches this transformation from shelters carved into cliffs and mountains. They record the changing sky and the return of water with reverence. For generations they had lived under domes, breathing recycled air, drinking condensed moisture. Now they step outside and lift their faces to real rain, their laughter echoing across the plains, like the cries of gulls from another age. They understand that what they witness is not merely survival but renewal, a continuation of the endless cycle of loss and rebirth that defines the earth. The new seas that form are small and scattered, but they shimmer with promise. They reflect the sun with the same calm glow that once belonged to vast oceans. As they grow, they carve new coastlines, fill old trenches, and reshape climates. Clouds once again drift across continents, bringing life where there was dust. Winds carry the scent of salt to places that have not known it for millennia. And beneath the thin crust, tectonic forces continue their slow dance, lifting mountains, sinking valleys, moving the face of the planet one heartbeat at a time. With each shift, the Earth remembers itself. In the mind's eye, you can see it not as a catastrophe, but as a lesson written across deep time. The oceans evaporated not to end life, but to remind it of its fragility, to strip the world bare, so that it could begin anew. The water that vanished to the sky has returned through the patience of geology, through the balance of heat and cold, and through the persistence of life itself. When night falls again over this reawakening world, the sound of gentle waves returns faint but real against the shores of the newborn seas. The stars shimmer in the dark water, and the moon's reflection ripples across its surface. You breathe in the cool air filled with moisture and memory, and you realize that the story of water is also the story of everything. It rises, it falls, it disappears, it returns. It changes shape but never essence. It is the mirror of life and the pulse of the planet. In this quiet understanding, the imagination comes to rest. The journey that began with sudden loss ends with renewal. The world is whole again, not as it was, but as it always becomes. You close your eyes, hearing the soft rhythm of waves against the shore, and the wind moving gently through the air. The planet turns slowly beneath the stars, balanced once more between fire and ice, between silence and song, between the memory of what was and the promise of what will be. In the long quiet after the oceans have vanished and then returned in scattered fragments, the planet enters an era of subtle transformation that unfolds so slowly it can only be measured in generations. The new bodies of water are small at first, shallow seas, pooled in the deepest basins, connected by rivers that carve across the mineral plains. Each drop of rain that falls is a note in a long-forgotten song, and each wave that forms whispers of what once was. The atmosphere thickens again as evaporation begins to balance condensation, and the air regains a softness that had been missing for centuries. Temperatures moderate, winds calm. The rhythm of days and nights grows gentler. In this renewed balance, life takes on new shapes. Species that endured the long drought evolve, rapidly adapting to an environment where water is precious but present. Amphibians reappear along the edges of lakes, their calls echoing into the night like prayers. Insects thrive on the moisture that gathers each morning on leaves. Plants spread in dense mats of green and gold across the new deltas, stabilizing the soil and inviting animals to return. In time, forests emerge, drawing carbon from the air and releasing oxygen back into the sky. The color of the planet deepens again to the rich blue and green that once defined it. Humanity watches this reawakening with awe. The stories of the vanished oceans are passed down not as tales of destruction, but as sacred memory. Generations grow up knowing that the earth is not permanent, but alive and cyclical. They build their homes along the shores of the new seas, not with arrogance but with reverence, using materials that harmonize with the land. Their technology draws on the power of sunlight, wind, and geothermal heat. Cities glow softly at night, powered by clean energy harvested from the same forces that once erased the oceans. Culture itself shifts. Art celebrates impermanence and renewal. Music mirrors the rhythm of tides that have returned. Languages evolve to include words for gratitude and respect that have no translation into older tongues. Humanity learns to see itself not as ruler, but as caretaker, a participant in the Earth's continuous unfolding. Standing at the edge of one of these reborn seas, you can feel that shift in consciousness. The waves lap gently against the shore, and the air carries the scent of salt and life. The horizon glows with faint light as the sun sets. The reflection of the sky and the water is so clear that it feels as if the heavens have descended to rest upon the earth. Night comes slowly, bringing with it the songs of nocturnal creatures and the cool breath of the wind moving over water. You breathe in deeply and sense that everything lost has found a way to return, though different, though changed, yet still the same in essence. The journey of the oceans has mirrored the journey of consciousness itself, from abundance to absence to awareness. Over the next millennia, the Earth stabilizes. The water cycle becomes steady. Rainfall feeds rivers that flow to the new seas. Clouds drift lazily across the continents, their shadows sliding over mountains and forests. Seasons find equilibrium once again. The climate softens into a rhythm that feels ancient and familiar. Life flourishes. Coral reefs begin to rebuild in shallow bays. Migrating birds follow new routes guided by the magnetic pulse of the planet. Whales return to the deeper basins, their songs echoing through the water, connecting distant corners of the world. The biosphere hums with vitality. Even the planet's geology adjusts. Sediments settle, forming new layers that record the memory of the cataclysm and recovery. Minerals from the old seafloors blend with organic matter from the new forests, creating soils richer than any before. The balance between rock, water, and life reaches a harmony unseen in eons. The Earth once again becomes a world of cycles, each one feeding the next, each one dependent on the others. From space, it glows softly blue, white, and green, suspended in darkness like a living jewel. To imagine this is to glimpse the patience of nature, the way destruction and creation are intertwined parts of the same breath. In this future, humanity walks lightly upon the land, conscious of its place within the pattern. The old monuments of the first civilization lie buried beneath new forests, their outlines softened by moss and time. People gather around firelight or under domes of glass by the water's edge, telling stories not of conquest, but of balance. The oceans that once vanished now shape their spirituality, serving as symbols of endurance and renewal. The lesson has been learned across millennia and written into every aspect of life. In this world, there is peace born from understanding. The journey from loss to harmony is complete, and the Earth turns once more beneath a sky mirrored in calm waters, endless, timeless whole. In the epochs that follow the rebirth of the oceans, the Earth moves through another great arc of change, a slower, gentler evolution that no longer destroys, but refines. The continents shift subtly under the quiet pressure of tectonic movement, their edges reshaped by erosion and sediment, carried by rivers that sparkle under clear skies. The seas deepen, slowly filling trenches and basins with the gathered memory of rain. From above, the planet glows like a gem wrapped in clouds, a living organism breathing through its blue veins of water. The tides return their rhythm steady and comforting, drawing the moon and the Earth once again into their ancient embrace. In coastal villages, people wake to the sound of waves rolling in steady as breath, and at night they fall asleep to the same rhythm. Life has come full circle, yet the memory of the dry age remains carved into cliffs and etched into songs. Humanity remembers the silence that once covered the world and honors it with moments of stillness, with rituals of gratitude that echo across generations. You can imagine walking through this age, the air warm and moist, filled with the hum of life. Forests reach from mountains to the water's edge, their leaves trembling in soft breezes. Beneath the surface of the new oceans, coral gardens bloom in colors unseen before, fed by minerals from the ancient seabed. Fish glide through shafts of sunlight filtering down like liquid gold. In the deepest trenches, strange new species evolve, adapted to the new chemistry of the water. Each living thing seems to carry within it the wisdom of what came before, the memory of endurance encoded in its being. The atmosphere is rich again, alive with vapor that rises from the seas and falls as rain across the continents. The balance between water and air has been restored, and with it, the stability of climate that sustains all life. Storms still come, but they are part of a pattern understood by all creatures. Rain nourishes the soil, then gathers in streams that return to the sea. Nothing is wasted, nothing truly lost. It is a world in harmony, a breathing cycle renewed. Over time, humanity's gaze turns outward once more. Having learned humility on its own planet, it begins to explore beyond the atmosphere, not to conquer, but to understand. Spacecraft drift through the silence above, carrying explorers who look down at their home and see not just a world, but a living story. The sight of blue oceans fills them with reverence, and they whisper silent thanks to the water that once disappeared and returned. From the edge of the solar system, the Earth shines as a faint but unmistakable blue light. To those who gaze upon it, the color is a symbol of continuity, the pulse of a world that endured change and became stronger. Meanwhile, on the surface, civilizations rise and fall, guided by the same tides of time that move the seas. Some build cities on floating platforms that drift with the currents. Others retreat inland, preferring the mountains and forests, but all live in respect of the cycles that sustain them. The myth of the vanished oceans becomes the central story of humanity, a tale of balance and renewal told to every child. It begins with fear and ends with peace, a reminder that destruction is never the final act. Artists paint murals of the dry basins now filled with life. Musicians compose symphonies inspired by the rhythm of waves. Poets write of the silence that once ruled, and the sound that followed it, the return of water as the return of meaning. The relationship between humanity and nature has shifted forever, from control to cooperation, from consumption to care. As millennia pass, the Earth's continents drift again, and the arrangement of land and sea changes once more. Ice grows at the poles, recedes, and grows again. Fountains rise where oceans sink, and valleys open where peaks once stood. Through it all, the oceans remain the constant element, the enduring breath of the planet. Their depths hide secrets, and their surfaces reflect the endless sky. They are the memory of the Earth written in motion. When you close your eyes, you can hear that motion, a slow, steady whisper, like breathing, like time itself. The story of what if the oceans evaporated overnight has become more than a question. It has become a reflection of life's capacity to endure, to transform, and to begin again. As the final light of another sunset glows over calm seas, the horizon blurs between water and sky, and everything seems to merge into one quiet harmony. The planet spins slowly through the vast silence of space, balanced once more between fire and water, between stillness and movement, and the faint echo of waves becomes the sound of peace. In the far distant future, the story of the oceans continues to evolve, and the Earth, though ancient, remains alive with transformation. The continents have drifted into new positions, merging and separating in the slow dance that has shaped them for billions of years. The seas have deepened and shallowed countless times, their borders shifting with the rhythm of the planet's pulse. Yet through all these cycles, the memory of that long-ago night when the oceans vanished endures in the collective mind of humanity as a parable of impermanence. The people of this distant era live in harmony with the tides, their cities designed to float or breathe with the motion of the sea. They draw energy from the interaction of wind and water, crafting technologies that mimic the elegance of natural balance. Their architecture is fluid, curving like waves, translucent like shells. They do not fight against the world's rhythms, but move with them. You can imagine the scene from high above, the planet turning slowly beneath a veil of thin clouds, continents fringed by glittering shorelines, vast currents swirling in slow spirals across the surface. The oceans glimmer in hues of turquoise and deep blue, sunlight scattering in infinite reflections. The air is clean, the weather gentle, the balance between evaporation and rainfall perfectly tuned. This is a world that has learned. Beneath the waves, life has diversified beyond imagination. Forests of coral stretch for miles, their colors blending in gradients of crimson, gold, and violet. Massive kelp structures rise toward the surface, home to countless creatures moving in choreographed patterns. In the deep, where light barely touches, bioluminescent organisms glow softly, forming constellations beneath the sea. Each heartbeat of the planet sends vibrations through this living ocean, and every current carries whispers of ancient stories. On land, forests sway with the same rhythm. Rivers flow like veins connecting mountains to the sea. In the quiet of dawn, dew collects on leaves, forming perfect spheres that glint in the light before falling to the ground, returning to the cycle of renewal. Humanity has long since transcended its earlier struggles for survival. People live simply, guided by a philosophy born from the memory of loss. They know that everything beautiful is fragile, that every abundance must be honored, and that balance is the truest form of power. In schools, children learn about the Great Evaporation as both history and myth, a lesson in humility and perseverance. Festivals are held to celebrate the return of the waters, where lights float on the surface of the sea, drifting slowly outward as symbols of gratitude. The night sky above them reflects on the waves, stars mirrored in water, creating the illusion that the heavens and the oceans have merged into one. Far beyond the surface, deep in the mantle, the planet's inner heat still moves. Volcanic islands rise and fall, reshaping coastlines and seeding new habitats. Each eruption sends minerals into the air and sea, feeding life rather than destroying it. The Earth has found its rhythm again, a perpetual motion of birth and renewal, destruction and creation, held in perfect harmony. From space, the Earth glows brighter than ever before, a luminous orb of blue and white circling the sun with quiet dignity. It is no longer just a planet of water and stone. It is a being of memory and transformation. Those who look upon it from the darkness beyond feel a deep stillness, as if witnessing not just a world but a living thought, a reflection of everything that endures. The oceans no longer roar with fury, they breathe softly, their waves carrying the pulse of time. And within that rhythm lies the secret of all existence, that nothing ever truly disappears, it only changes form. The water that once vanished into the sky, that once froze, that once fell as rain, still flows through every living thing, through every breath, through every drop of blood, through every word spoken into the silence of the universe. The earth is no longer waiting. It is whole. Its story is not of loss but of return. The oceans have evaporated and been reborn, and in their endless cycle lies the promise that even in emptiness, life finds a way to begin again. As the eons drift onward, the Earth's story expands into something beyond the comprehension of its earliest inhabitants, and yet the essence of that first question remains. What if the oceans evaporated overnight? It is now a tale recited not as speculation, but as a distant truth remembered through countless generations. Civilization has matured into quiet wisdom. The people of this distant age no longer measure progress through conquest or accumulation, but through harmony and understanding. They build with water and light, creating structures that change color with the tide and breathe with the rhythm of waves. Every movement of the ocean is recorded in art and science alike, for the sea is both teacher and mirror. The cycles of evaporation and rain are charted with reverence, not control. Above this tranquil world, the sky stretches vast and brilliant, streaked with delicate cirrus clouds that drift like brushstrokes. From horizon to horizon, the air carries the soft taste of salt and life. The seasons turn gently, guided by a balance so refined that the line between summer and autumn feels more like an inhale and an exhale than a change. Across the planet, ecosystems hum in synchrony. The forests feed the rivers nourish the seas, and the seas return their gift as rain. The great whales sing again, their voices traveling through currents that wrap around the globe. These songs are not merely calls, but echoes of ancient memory, a dialogue between what was and what is. Humanity listens and understands, for it too carries the memory of that silence when no ocean sang. On nights when the moon is full, people gather along the shores to watch the tide shimmer with light. Children float lanterns shaped like droplets across the water, each one a symbol of remembrance. The waves carry them outward, and the reflection of those tiny lights joins the stars above, blending sky and sea until they are indistinguishable. The air fills with laughter, with awe, and with a reverent stillness that reminds all who are present that life is both fragile and infinite. Far below in the deep trenches, the water still trembles with heat from the planet's core. There are forests of stone and crystal, where creatures without eyes drift through the dark, their bodies glowing faintly blue. These beings have never seen sunlight, yet they live in perfect rhythm with the planet's unseen tides. In their own way, they too are part of the same great song. The surface world knows nothing of their daily existence, but it feels their contribution in the chemistry of the seas, in the slow oxygenation of the deep, in the subtle pulse of energy that moves through every living thing. The balance is complete, intricate beyond imagination. From time to time, the planet shifts again. A meteor glances across the atmosphere. A volcano erupts, an ice age whispers across the poles. But these changes are woven into the tapestry, no longer feared but understood. The world has learned the lesson that the oceans once taught: to yield, to flow, to return. The people of this age explore beyond their world. They travel to neighboring planets, not seeking to escape but to share the knowledge of cycles, of balance, of patience. They find barren spheres and frozen moons, and in them they see the potential for renewal, just as their ancestors once saw hope in the dry ocean basins of Earth. They carry with them water from the seas, not as resource but as symbol, droplets sealed in glass spheres that shimmer like captured stars. These vessels of memory are placed in the soil of new worlds, a promise that life will follow wherever there is care and time. The oceans of Earth remain vast, but now they are also sacred. There is no pollution, no excess, no waste, for to harm the water is to wound the world's heart. The civilizations that rise live lightly, their cities reflected on the surface of calm bays, their lights soft as constellations mirrored below. In the deepest quiet of night, when the wind ceases and the waves are still, you can almost hear the earth breathing, a sound as soft as sleep, as steady as eternity. The ocean's surface shimmers like glass, the stars above ripple in its depths, And somewhere in that reflection lies the answer to every question ever asked. The oceans evaporated once, and yet they returned. From silence came song, from emptiness abundance. The world turned still, blue and alive. Each revolution a reminder that nothing that truly belongs to the earth is ever lost, only waiting to be found again. In the unbroken passage of time, the oceans become more than a physical presence. They become a consciousness, a memory, embedded in the fabric of existence itself. Every molecule of water that drifts through the sky or flows within the veins of life carries a trace of what once was, a whisper of the long silence when the seas were gone. The planet remembers in ways beyond language. When rain falls, it is not only moisture returning to soil, but the continuation of a story that began when the first clouds formed and the first rivers cut through stone. Humanity listens in quiet awe, for the oceans are no longer just the cradle of life but the keeper of its wisdom. From their rhythm, people have learned patience, from their depths, humility, and from their tides, the eternal truth that balance is not stillness, but movement. Standing upon the shore of this evolved world, you would see the horizon stretching farther than sight, the air shimmering with light reflected from endless water. The sound of waves has become the measure of time itself, slow and steady like the pulse of a sleeping giant. In the mornings, the mist rises from the sea in translucent curtains, carrying the scent of salt and memory into the hills. The sun climbs through layers of soft gold and silver, and as its light touches the waves, they blaze briefly like molten glass before settling into a calm shimmer. The atmosphere is clear, the winds gentle, the temperature mild. It is as though the earth has reached its own version of enlightenment. Beneath the surface, the oceans teem with life that is both ancient and new. There are creatures that glow like lanterns, drifting through forests of coral that sing with the hum of energy. Whales pass like shadows, their low voices resonating through miles of water, communicating across continents. Tiny plankton rise and fall with the tides, feeding everything above them in invisible generosity. It is a world that breathes in harmony. On land, humanity has long ceased to expand outward with urgency. Instead, it cultivates inward depth. Cities float on calm seas, anchored by living reefs that sustain them. Gardens bloom on terraces carved from mountains. Rivers flow through engineered wetlands that cleanse themselves and feed back into the cycle of the ocean. Technology is no longer an intrusion upon nature, but an extension of its rhythm. Machines hum softly like insects powered by light and tide. There is no longer separation between what is human and what is natural. Both are part of a single organism, the living earth. The people of this age speak little of fear, for they have learned that loss and renewal are the same motion viewed from different distances. In temples of water built along the coasts, they gather to watch the tides. Their rituals are simple: silence, breath, and observation. To them, watching a wave break upon the shore is an act of meditation, a lesson in impermanence. They live by the law of flow, nothing hoarded, nothing wasted, everything returned. In this harmony, the earth has become a symphony. Every current and gust of wind a note in an endless composition. The deep past is never forgotten. In the archives of crystalline memory kept beneath the oceans, records of the great evaporation are preserved. Not written in paper or stone, but in sound, the echo of ancient waves translated into harmonic codes. Scholars of this future world listen to these vibrations and hear the story of the time when the seas disappeared, understanding it not as tragedy, but as initiation. They teach that only through absence can one understand presence, that only through silence can one appreciate song. Across generations, this philosophy shapes every thought, every creation. The arts flourish not in the pursuit of novelty, but in the perfection of simplicity. Painters use the water itself as medium, their works dissolving and reforming with the tide. Music is performed in the resonance of the sea, instruments carved from shells and coral producing tones that seem to emerge from the depths. Poetry is written on air, spoken aloud to waves that carry the words into eternity. The planet has become the artist and humanity its listener. In this serenity, even time feels transformed. Centuries pass unnoticed, marked only by the slow drift of constellations overhead. The sun's warmth, the moon's pull, and the ocean's rhythm remain constant. The balance achieved is not static, but alive, adjusting, breathing. It is a form of perfection that allows change without chaos, motion without destruction. To imagine this world is to glimpse the ultimate destiny of any living system, to learn, to adapt, to remember. And so the question once asked, what if the oceans evaporated overnight, finds its answer not in ruin but in revelation. The oceans did not die. They ascended, they transformed, they returned purer and wiser. They became the teachers of all who followed. The earth has transcended disaster and entered a new equilibrium, a harmony so complete that even the stars seem to pulse in rhythm with its tides. To stand here in this future is to understand that every end is only a preparation for renewal, and that in the infinite patience of the cosmos, nothing is truly lost. As the final ages of the earth unfold, the oceans continue their quiet song beneath a dimming sun. The planet has entered its long twilight, not in violence but in grace. The continents have settled into new shapes, the mountains softened by time, the skies washed pale by endless generations of wind and rain. The air is cool, the days are gentle, and the rhythm of the tides endures even as the light begins to change. Humanity has become something different, not vanished, but transformed. No longer bound to cities or nations, people live within the cycles of the earth itself. Their homes drift upon the seas, moving with currents that circle the globe. They speak little, for words have grown unnecessary, replaced by understanding that flows through gesture and song. Each dawn is greeted not with fear of loss, but gratitude for continuity. The sound of water against hulls and stones has become the universal prayer, a whisper of existence itself. The technology of this era is indistinguishable from nature. Towers of living coral harvest light and air to feed both human and marine life. Floating gardens bloom with crops nourished by seawater, made gentle through ancient biotic processes. Energy moves through invisible threads woven by the tides and the wind. Everything that is created returns seamlessly to the world that birthed it. Even art no longer seeks permanence but harmony. Sculptures are made of sand to be reshaped by waves. Music exists only in the moment it is heard. Memory lives not in objects but in the motion of the sea. The people have become reflections of the water, calm, flexible, and infinitely patient. They have learned that to resist the current is to break, and that true strength lies in surrender. As the sun ages and begins to swell, the oceans shimmer beneath its brighter light. The heat rises slowly, but life does not flee. It adapts. Species migrate to deeper waters or higher altitudes. Plants alter their chemistry to breathe in thicker air. Humanity begins its final migration upward, constructing habitats high in the atmosphere and beyond, where they can watch the earth from above and remember its serenity. From those vantage points, they see the planet glimmer like a jewel, the oceans glowing gold under the swollen sun. They understand that this too is part of the cycle. Everything that has form must change. One evening, as the sun sets enormous and crimson over the horizon, the oceans reflect its light in a blaze that covers half the world. It is the most beautiful sight ever seen, the entire surface of the planet turned to liquid fire. For a moment, the sky and the sea are one, the boundary between them erased. The air shimmers with heat and light, and the sound of the waves becomes indistinguishable from the beating of the human heart. And then slowly, quietly, the evaporation begins again. The great cycle repeats itself, but this time there is no panic, no resistance, only awareness. Humanity watches as mist rises from the seas, curling upward into the air, glowing with sunlight. The clouds thicken and swirl and the sky turns white. The oceans begin to fade not as catastrophe but as ascension. The water rises into the heavens, spreading across the sky, until the world below is wrapped in a luminous veil. The planet breathes one last sigh and grows still. What remains is a world of light and memory. The oceans have returned to the sky, where they began carrying with them the essence of all that lived and all that dreamed. The earth is no longer a place but a presence, a rhythm that continues even as form dissolves. In that silence, one can still hear the faint echo of waves, the heartbeat of a planet that never truly ended. It is not destruction but transformation, the same truth that has always guided the story of water and life. To imagine this ending is to understand the secret at the core of existence, that nothing is ever lost, only changed. The oceans evaporate, they fall, they rise, they return. The cycle is eternal, and in that eternal motion lies peace. The earth drifts through space, a ghost of blue light suspended in memory, but its song endures, carried on the breath of stars. Somewhere in the vastness, perhaps on another world, moisture gathers, clouds form, rain begins to fall, and life stirs again. The ocean's journey continues unbroken across the cosmos, a reminder that creation is not an event, but a rhythm without end. And as you listen to that rhythm, the sound soft and distant like breathing, you realize that it is the same rhythm that beats within your chest. The ocean is within you as you are within it, bound together by the simple miracle of continuity. You exhale and the world exhales with you. You inhale and it returns. The cycle completes itself, and in that completion there is peace.